about today's topic because it's on collaboration. So we're going to be discussing, oh no, okay, sorry. Okay. So we'll be discussing ethical consideration in interprofessional collaboration. So the paper that I'll be referring to a lot today is this paper, the the ethical obligations, barriers, and solutions for interprofessional collaboration in the treatment of autistic individuals by Henderson and colleagues. So this was published in Behavior Analysis in Practice in 2023. And I think it has some really good information for us to discuss, and hopefully it'll help us become like better collaborators in our respective teams. Okay, so here's our introduction. So why is collaboration so important? Because collaboration is the best way to achieve maximal outcomes for complex clients by combining the strengths of different disciplines such as education, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, speech-language pathology, and other health professionals. So I'm sure, as you guys know, a lot of our clients, especially kids diagnosed with autism, they have a lot of comorbidities. So they might have like digestive issues, they have like sleep issues, and they struggle in school. Some of them might have like motor, like apraxia. So there's so many other professionals that we need to collaborate with, because obviously in grad school, we don't learn about like the muscles that help us make certain sounds, or how we can strengthen fine motor to help them with daily living skills, like even holding a spoon and so forth. So it's so important for us to work with so many different individuals. So hopefully today's discussion is going to be very fruitful for all of us. So before we start talking about collaboration, I just want to share that there is a spectrum of collaboration, ranging from a more autonomous type of collaboration to a more interdependent type of collaboration. So starting from the more autonomous type, we have multidisciplinary approach, where professionals work in parallel on discipline-specific tasks. So each professional just has their own specific goals, and there is limited communication and coordination between all these professionals. And then right in the middle, we have our interdisciplinary approach, where the professionals have coordinated tasks. So what I'm imagining is each professional has like a goal that they need to meet. And then there's a lot of communication, perhaps even timed like regular meetings. And then they work together towards a shared goal, but they still operate within their discipline-specific roles. And then in the more interdependent side of the spectrum, we have transdisciplinary approach, where a team forms an integrated expertise, and then they have a unified treatment plan that blends across disciplines of the different members in the collaborative team. So I guess the first discussion question for us today is, what type of collaboration do you guys usually engage in your practice? Maybe I'll start. For me personally, in Indonesia, I engage in the multidisciplinary approach the most, because one, in my organization, in my clinic, we only have ABA. We don't have resources for like speech and OT. And it's really hard for us to like collaborate with people because of the barriers, which we will talk about later in the following slides. But how about you guys? What type of collaboration do you guys have experience in your practice?
Yeah, definitely the multidisciplinary approach one. Some interdisciplinary approach. and one transdisciplinary approach just because the kid goes to my school and JBC. So
Oh,
like I collaborate with myself, and between myself and teachers, yeah, and therapists obviously, but that was only possible because yeah, it goes to JBC and my school.
yeah.
For me, most of the collaboration was also multidisciplinary approach. But when I worked in Bahrain, we had OT and speech with ABA. So we went into each other's session and
Ooh.
then like saw how we do it. And then ABA, we kind of show them how to approach in like an ABA way. They
Mm,
can do speech, but then we introduce how to use the um, consequences and stuff. So I guess that would be interdisciplinary approach, right? Yeah.
mhm.
And at school in Korea, I do PBS, which is for positive behavior support. I think that one is also interdisciplinary approach. We go in teams with the OT and AB, one ABA and one OT, and then we see the child together, and then we each come up with like in our own expertise, we have tasks that we can work on together, but it's not like it's not completely interdependent. So
Mm,
it's not like one unified treatment plan, but we do it in an interdisciplinary way.
cool. That's so cool to hear, like the different experiences that you guys have in collaboration. So we'll talk a little bit more, maybe like in the later slides, but let's move on. Today's definition of interprofessional collaboration will be the collaboration among the various professionals who practice any of the discipline that provides services to autistic individuals. So this is the definition for today. And yeah, let's discuss more about collaboration. So, what is the purpose of collaboration? The purpose of collaboration is so that each team member benefits from the interactions from collaboration, but ultimately so that the client can benefit from a higher quality of care. And then collaboration may include joint development of common client goals. It might include shared responsibility to achieve set goals, flexibility to compromise and accept new ideas, readiness to listen, a reflective evaluation of collaborative process, willingness to accept feedback, a non-judgmental use of professional expertise as equals to meet client goals. So that are just some things that are part of collaboration. So as you can see, some of them are like soft skills, but also some of them are more like skills, not like hard skills. Now I want to discuss a little bit about our ethics code because we have like the newer ethics code, right? The one that is published in 2020. And collaboration is actually highlighted in our ethics code. So we as behavior analysts, we are called to work to maximize benefits and do no harm by effectively and respectfully collaborating with others in the best interest of those with whom they work on always placing clients' interests first. So we are called to collaborate based on our ethics code. And another ethics code that relates to collaboration is 2.10. Behavior analysts collaborate with colleagues from their own and other professions in the best interest of the clients and stakeholders. Behavior analysts address conflicts by compromising when possible and always prioritizing the best interest of the client. Behavior analyst documents all actions taken in these circumstances and their eventual outcomes. So it really highlights that we are called to collaborate it not just within the field of ABA, but also across disciplines, which is a little bit different from the previous ethics code, which we will discuss later in the later slides. We are also called to collaborate when transitioning services from one provider to another provider, just to minimize disruptions in the transition of services. Other key ethical points from our ethics code is always getting informed consent from client's legal guardian or parent prior to disclosing confidential client information to other professionals, making appropriate efforts to involve stakeholders when selecting goals, relying on behavioral principles based upon scientific evidence when making professional decisions, and operating within one's professional competence. So this just highlights when we collaborate, we need to ask for permission first, especially for us. Like most of us, we work, well, at least Felicia and I, we work in like a center specializes in ABA, and then we need to share client progress and information and how they're doing in therapy. So we just have to be reminded that there always needs to be proper documentation whenever we're sharing these type of information. And then always involving stakeholders when selecting goals, just so that we're not stepping on each other's toes during therapy is also very important. And also operating within one's professional competence. So I think it's also so important for us as professionals to know what our scope of practice is, what we have training in and what we don't have training in. I think it's really important for us to not think that we can do everything, because that's just not very realistic here, right? For us to be experts in every single thing. So what's the problem? The problem today is collaboration is actually a skill, right? Not everyone is born and then they know how to collaborate effectively. And the problem is that collaboration is not typically included in training for behavior analysts. This requires behavior analysts then to seek and develop collaborative skills on their own before demonstrating competence in collaboration, which might not allow them to effectively participate in a collaborative team. So just looking back to all of our grad school experiences, like how much training did we get on collaboration? For me personally, I don't even think collaboration even came up in my grad school practice. However, during practicum, it did come up because I was lucky enough to work in a team with like an SLP and OT and all that. So I was able to see what working collaboratively is like. But I think this was back in around like 2020, right? And I don't think there was much literature on, or even 2018, I think it was 2018, 2019, there wasn't much literature on like what collaboration looked like, what skills were needed for collaboration. So I think for me personally, I was like forced to sink or swim, like either you figure out how to navigate like relationships between like behavior analysts and other professionals. So how about you guys? What was your experience in grad school or even just in your training? Did you receive any training on collaboration skills at all?
Yeah, but not when I was taking my coursework. So at my other grad school, it was I took a course in leadership for social change organization, and they attempt to teach collaboration skills. However, it is a harder skill to teach, I think, because it's I think as with any other skills, you cannot just have it taught to you, right? It needed to be modeled, practice, and coach, right? And so I think that modeling, that coaching, that modeling, practice, modeling, and then practicing, and then coaching is definitely an element that I didn't get. Yeah, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Felicia, you also practiced in a school, right? Back in the States,
Mm-hmm.
behavior analyst. So
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, because usually in schools they have like different professionals, like they have like OT, they have speech, and they have like behavior analysts and they have teachers. Were you able to observe collaborative skills between professionals in your school, and did your direct supervisor
Mm.
emphasize that, hey, Felicia, this is a skill, this is how we navigate um, uh, when we disagree on opinions or approaches? Did you get any of that at all?
Okay. So like the dynamics in an American school usually is that the teacher is the queen, right? Like it's their kingdom. Like their classroom is their kingdom, and whatever they say goes. So I think the model of collaboration over there is that so I was really lucky that I was student teaching in a school, in a really, really wealthy school district where each class has their own SLP and OT. So and it's an inclusive school. That means there are children who are typically developing, and there are also kiddos who are in the spectrum or has other disabilities. And so how they did it over there is that the SLP sort of support whatever the teacher's direction, and then it is sort of like, okay, so if we are talking about animals, then the SLP will have targets that includes responding to say to teachers' questions about different animals, for example, or if the teacher has a morning routine, like I don't know, like hello, good morning, so happy to see you, Tania, or like who do we have here? Tania, for example. And then that kid will have a Big Mac that he can press and says his name or her name. But it is very much centered on the teachers planning and how they sort of manage the class. So it was really interesting because I would say that the collaboration is quite minimal. It's actually interesting to see that. But they each have their own expertise. Like for example, handwriting. It would be the OT who plans it. The handwriting lesson. It would be the OT that plans it, and then the teacher. All we do is just support whatever the OT has already planned for all the kids in the classroom. And then for social skills, for example, it will be the SLP that plans it. So during snack time, they will have this communication board already set up for everybody, and all we have to do is just sort of like support that. So I really do see sort of minimal collaboration in that. And even in IEP meetings, again, because I was working at a really wealthy public school, like pretty much everybody has already understood their roles, and I didn't really see a lot of disagreement being settled. Maybe some with the parent, but then it was just between the parent and the special education teacher. But everybody else sort of have their own plan that they write and include in the IEP. That makes sense.
I see. So like every professional, they had a specific skill that they're in charge of, sort of, right? And then the direction, or like the big goals, like for example, handwriting or like social skills, that comes from the lead teacher.
No, actually they have their own. So like the way that they plan things, it would be separate. Like like the handwriting, it would be OT. So the OT would be planning all the handwriting portions, and then even for kids who are typically developing. And then, like I said, social skills, that would be the SLP who is leading that effort. And teachers, the teacher plans something, like science and play and pre-write, and phonics, and the SLP sort of support that that effort. They are sort of like they're in the classroom together with the kids, and so everything was embedded into those lessons, and they sort of like just supported the kids in vivo. But it's very clear who is leading which lesson. And it was an unwritten rule. It was an agreed upon unwritten rule that everybody just sort of support whoever is leading that portion, if that makes sense. Like, like I said, handwriting skills, those would be the OT's responsibility. And when that lesson is given, the OT is giving that lesson. And so the teacher and the SLP, we just sort of support all the students during that lesson. And then yeah, and then for social skills, it will be the SLP that is leading that lesson, and so the teacher will then step back and support the SLP that way. But we don't really inform each other of our lesson plans. It was kept really distinct and separate, but we sort of like support that lesson when it was being given. And support the students that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very insightful. Like hearing about how even if there's a lot of professionals in one team, the degree of collaboration can differ too. So it's not necessarily there's so many professionals in that team, the collaboration is high. So it differs then. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really didn't recall any like team meeting. The team meeting would be between the teachers and the assistant teachers, not the teacher, SLP, and OT. And so when we are writing when we are writing the IEPs, so it would just be so we would be writing our portion of the IEP, the teacher's portion of the IEP, some academic, some visual perception, whatever, and then there would also be the blank parts in the IEP where the SLP and the OT will fill in. So they work separately that way.
I see.
Yeah.
Super cool. So now there's this problem that we have. So what is the purpose of today's discussion? So today we're going to discuss how behavior analysts can meet their ethical obligations in effective collaboration with other professionals by first clarifying expectations and obligations when collaborating as outlined in the ethics code. And then we're going to discuss how we can gain and increase competencies in collaborating with other professionals, and also identify barriers and some solutions for effective collaboration. So before we even start collaborating with different professionals, the first step is we need to be familiar with the relevant ethic codes relating to collaboration. Which we have discussed previously, but I will show you more ethics codes in the next slides. And also, we have to reflect on our competence in collaborating with other professionals. Do you have the necessary skills in collaborating? Because like we mentioned previously, collaborating is not something natural that we do, and it is a skill that needs to be learned. Like Felicia said, there needs to be instruction, there needs to be rehearsal and coaching and feedback. So it's not a natural skill. So now, this is the first point. These are our ethic codes that refer to some recommendations for collaboration, right? So the first one from section 1, responsibilities as a professional. We need to practice within a defined role. So whenever we're working in a collaborative team, we have to make sure that each professional knows what their role is within the treatment team. So for example, OT, okay, you're in charge of teaching so-and-so skills. And then maybe speech, you're in charge of teaching articulation or helping with articulation or even using AAC devices. And then we also are reminded to practice within one scope. So whenever we want to practice a skill, we have to make sure that we have received the necessary training and also supervision. Maintaining competence is also very important. right? We have to engage in continuing education about collaboration, and then being aware of personal biases and challenges. I think this is super important. Like for myself in particular, I need to reflect on the type of behavior analytic training I received. So all of us, we have different we have different supervisors, right? And then different supervisors, some of them are more rigid than others. So for example, for myself, I've had so many different supervisors throughout grad school, and I've had supervisors who are very rigid, like very researchy, who's like, ABA is number one, go ABA, full stop. And then I have other supervisors who are more like collaborative and more open to learning about other disciplines and all that. So we have to be able to reflect on our biases too. Responding to request. This is super important when other people request information from us. We have to make sure we're responding ethically and also consistently. Other parts of our ethics code that relate to collaboration. We have to make sure the treatment ultimately maximizes client outcomes. So treatment has to be effective. We need to be careful about sharing confidential information. And then this is super important when we're working in a team. We have to make sure we use jargon-free language so that communication is clear across team members. Always put in efforts into involving different stakeholders. We need to collaborate with professionals, and then we have to address conflicts appropriately, documenting everything. Considering medical needs is super important too. Like we have mentioned in the beginning slides, a lot of our clients, they have comorbidities. Some of them have seizures, digestive issues, sleep issues, and so forth. So it's so important for us to work with doctors too to rule out medical needs. Describing behavior change intervention, so documenting and writing everything that we want to implement is super important too. It's an important part of collaboration, so everyone's on the same page. And continuous evaluation of behavior change intervention. This is one of the first skills I learned about collaboration from my supervisor, is that sometimes as behavior analysts, because I don't know about you guys, but when I was in grad school, it's always highlighted that, okay, ABA is the gold standard, we're evidence-based, blah, blah, blah. And this sort of creates the mentality that other approaches, they're not evidence-based, or like they're not enough evidence for other approaches. And so one of the first things I learned is that for you to be on the good side of other professionals, for you to be included in their team, instead of like accusing like, oh no, that's not gonna work, or like this is weird, like what's the evidence to that, like, because if we're not trained, we're probably, okay, show me the research paper, where's the data that shows that this intervention works. So how about us taking the data, let them implement what they want to implement, and then we take the data to just show them if it works or not. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then we can come up with other solutions. Responsibilities to clients and stakeholder. Again, putting aside personal biases and focusing on the client's need, identifying stakeholders, and our obligation to each stakeholder. This includes communicating well and also documenting the things we do. And then we have to only accept clients who fits into our scope of competence, be open to consulting with other providers, and also appropriately transitioning services which we have talked about in the previous slides. Okay, so what are the ways we can gain competence in collaboration? There are 3 ways that we're going to discuss today. Like Felicia said, she didn't necessarily get training on collaboration in grad school, but in other ways, like maybe through professional development or supervision or consultation. So what's really cool is in the 5th edition task list. Collaboration is part of the task list. So it's good to know that as a field, we have changed and we have improved compared to like previous years where collaboration was not on there. And what's really cool, so there's this study by Kelly and Tinkani. It's this study right here. So they did a study surveying 302 behavioral professionals, just asking them about their experience in collaborative training and their practice in collaboration. And they found that 67% of the participants in their survey, they reported not completing any coursework in collaboration, with collaboration in the course title or description. So like even Felicia, just now you said you did receive some training on collaboration from grad school, but it wasn't from like a behavior analysis course, right? It's from like a social something course, like a different, was it an elective?
Yeah, it was different. Yeah. Yes. However, I did take part in the 5th edition task list. I did participate in that, and there was some collaboration, but I think even my professors don't really know how to do it. So it was it's like a blind man leading another blind person, you know. Yeah.
No, that is such a good point, Felicia, because I totally felt the same way. Like some, I don't know if you guys felt the shift starting in 2020 when COVID was happening. There was a rise in like the importance of collaboration, the importance of like cultural sensitivity, right? In behavior analysis. And I truly felt like the blind was leading the blind because our professors, they were like learning about it. And then we were learning together with them. And we weren't able to get that full experience where we're like watching, right? Because like Felicia said, we need to see a model, so they need to model like what collaboration looks like. We didn't get that. We might not even have gotten like chances for rehearsal or even coaching or like receiving feedback from our professors because they didn't get that from their professors. So I guess at this point we're just trying our best. We're just trying our best. Okay, cool. So there are some studies that show examples of how one might gain competence in collaboration through coursework. For example, White and colleagues, they recruited 4 grad students, 2 ABA grad students, 1 OT and 1 SLP, and each grad student, they were coached on 2 core skills from the other professionals. So if I was an ABA grad student, I would receive two skills coached by SLP and then 2 skills coached by OT. And then if I was an SLP, I'll get like 2 from ABA, 2 from OT. And they found that this type of training was effective. And the result was that each student demonstrated mastery in the cross-trained skills, which is really cool, right? So I think, I don't know, I think it might be beneficial for like behavior analysts, ABA departments and universities collaborating with other departments that we know we work together with a lot. Or even when I was like doing the slideshow, I was thinking, would it be cool for us to have overlapping classes with SLPs and OTs so that we get, yes, yeah. Do you want to talk? Do you want to have a comment? Okay, you're good. Okay, cool. Would it be cool to have those kind of classes so that we can learn their basic principles and also we have experience collaborating with them? So something to think about. Another paper by Boyven and colleagues talked about this program, this 15-week program that involved training participants in collaborative skills, which involved selecting readings and making summaries of these readings and doing projects and even doing self-meds on different professionals' fields. So they were taught how to look up papers from like the ASHA, like the speech journals or like the OT journals, and they were taught how to dissect and summarize the findings. Which is really cool because, to be honest, for myself, I'm not familiar with the journals of other professionals. Like, I don't know what the what the different journals are. Like, I might know a few, but not all. And even then, one other thing that I thought of is, you know how we have this resources tab in our BACB accounts, and we have access to all these behavior analysis journal. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we also had access to like OT and speech and other pediatric journals? I think that would be super, super cool. And maybe it's something that we can write to the BACB about.
Here. I really love that idea. Yes, Nadia.
Right? Okay, Val, next time we see Neil, we have to ask. Okay, cool. And then next, professional development, which includes, so we can learn collaboration through professional development, like the one that we're having today. So by reading relevant literature, attending conferences, conventions, doing workshops, and all of that. But the same study, or like the same survey by Kelly and Tinkani in 2013, they found that only 45% of the 300 something behavior analysts that they surveyed, 45%, have attended workshops with collaboration in the title or description. So a few things might be happening here. It might be that there's not a lot of workshops or seminars on collaboration. There can also be, there's not many studies on collaboration. Yeah, so I think it's definitely maybe an area that needs more research, and there needs more training in this area also. Last, in supervision, we can do it through supervision and consultation. Even in the BACB ethics code, they talked about how supervision, coaching, consultation, these are all great ways for us to increase competence in other disciplines. Bailey and Birch in 2016, they talked about spending several weeks in a place where a new skill can be observed, and us having an opportunity to practice under supervision of an expert, which I think is super cool. I like the idea of it, but feasibility wise, I'm not sure like how feasible it is. Us just like 7 weeks going somewhere and then be given the opportunity to implement like SLP skills or like OT skills. One, I don't know if we have the time to do that, like limited resources on our end, but also limited resources in the profession, other professionals' end. And there might be like what confidentiality things. Maybe some parents don't want other professionals from outside observing their kids, so there are a lot of barriers to this too. However, it is a good idea, and I would love an opportunity to do that. So they talked also about cross training, and this involves conducting reviews of seminal research from another profession's treatment. Another thought that I had when I was like doing this presentation was, for our CEUs, we need like 32 CEUs every time we renew, right? I was thinking, what if the BACB requires us to take CEUs from like SLP or OT? Would that be like a good proactive strategy to quote unquote force us professionals to contact literature from other disciplines? So that's just a thought that I had when I was doing the presentation. And then whenever we're receiving training from other professionals, we need to make sure that we know the purpose of intervention, the description of intervention, what the desired effects are, what the side effects are, and the research supporting said intervention. So, yep, so cross training involves receiving training also, and then attending interpersonal workshops. Do you guys have any thoughts before I move on to the next section?
Just a little one. I was just thinking about, how only 45% of BCBAs are willing to take part in titles that has collaboration in it. I don't know. I was just thinking how relevant that is for us, BCBAs who are practicing internationally in a culture that is not Western industrialized country. And I don't know. I think for me personally, that was the reason why I never take part in anything that says collaboration, because I feel that it's just so different the way uh collaboration is, especially if the stakeholders has a very different cultural background. And so I don't know, anything that has supervision, anything that has collaboration, I mean, if it is not required by the BACB because of just a difference in culture, I just have very limited interest in it. I don't know. I wonder if it's just me.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, Felicia. Well, for the for the survey itself, the one that we looked at, I didn't really look at the participants' profile, so I can't really say if it's like if being international or not is a factor in that 46%. However, your point is really good, because when I was reading through the barriers of this paper, which we will discuss in a couple of slides, I was thinking about like the cultural implications. With most of us being in Asia, collaboration is is looked upon differently than in the United States, right? Or even in other countries, maybe like Australia. I don't know if Tante was here, or like other, maybe we can chat with the rest when we see them, talk about how it's different in their countries.
Kiara said cross training. I'm thinking even from ABA field and psychology, there's some good methods been used in psych field. For
Mhm.
example, motivational interviewing that ABA people can benefit from. Yes, amen to that.
Yes, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Even when I was at Vanderbilt, it was all the approach was very behavioral, and I was really shocked that they don't really they don't really read up the research that are on in a more general education part, like for cognition, for example, like how important reflecting on what you have just learned, how what and that effect in to encode that new knowledge in your long-term memory. I was really shocked because my professor had no idea about how important reflection was. um,
Mm.
and the, and yeah, anyway, so I do think that people in ABA are way too focused on just ABA. I wonder, is it because us in the field, we have been attacked so much, in terms of that we have to fight so much, that to say that what we are practicing over here, it's the science, it is evidence based, and because of that we have this MO to just to go on the attack, to escape that, I don't know, humiliation or whatever that is.
No, yeah, that's a very good point. The paper actually talks about that a little bit, Felicia, about how us um, behavior analysts, like our history and all that, and how it affects our take on collaboration. So let's talk a little bit about that um, later in the following slides. Also, am I lagging? No? Okay, great. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, cool. So now that we talked about ethics, And then we know like the ethical considerations. Now we can start talking about the considerations for engaging in collaboration, which includes the barriers, limitation, and the differences among service providers. So let's start with talking about some common barriers to collaboration. So the first being organizational constraints. So maybe the way a certain organization is structured, that has become a constraint in effective collaboration, caseload size. So us as behavior analysts, we might have more time compared to SLPs and OTs, because what I realized is that, say I have like one client, they might have 40 contact hours, like 40 therapy hours, right? So, but for an SLP, each week they only see a client like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours max. So they have more clients compared to us. Like the number of clients that they're in charge of, it's more compared to us. So they might not have time to collaborate and attend these meetings with us. Proximity might also limit communication and frequency of collaborative opportunities. This really hit close to home because one of the struggles that we have here is not having enough professionals who are well trained in speech, in occupational therapy in Indonesia. And that leads us to having to outsource from other countries, which makes it hard, right? Just recently, I tried outsourcing an SLP, not from Indonesia, and was met with various visa problems. So that's also like a barrier. It makes it hard for us to collaborate. And then the time difference and all that makes it a little bit harder too. Time constraints. So everyone's busy. Finding a time where everyone is free on the weekday to meet is very hard. Confusion in roles and responsibility of different professionals. So as you guys know, us with OT, us with speech, there's a lot of overlapping areas, right? Like for example, ABA and speech, we work on communication, right? Us and OT, we work on daily living skills. And those are just two examples. There's more. So because of these overlapping skills or like goals, there might be confusion, and the division of responsibility might be a little bit hard. Differences in theory and methodology can also become a barrier, and lack of common language to technical jargon is also a barrier. So like prompting, I realize now that I work with different professionals, a lot of professionals, they use prompting. They just don't say prompting. They use scaffolding. They use like help. They use other words, but it's essentially the same thing, right? So that's also a barrier. Other barriers: the need for recognition for one's work's value. So this could be like put it roughly, like an ego thing, right? If I work in a team, will the ABA's contributions be highlighted enough, or like will speech be seen as better than ABA, or like will ABA be seen better than OT, and all that? Like those things can be barriers too. The fear of opposition, this is also a barrier, especially when you're working with a team in an Asian country where seniority is such a big thing. It's really hard because there's a lot of cultural factors that you need to think about, right? Like how do I disagree with this senior politely, even though deep down I know what they're doing is more harmful than not? Those things like we have to navigate. Avoidance of confrontation. I think us as a culture too, I don't know how it is in Korea, but I feel like Indonesians don't like confrontation. So it has become a barrier for us too. And then the skeptical nature of behavior analysts might also be misinterpreted as skepticism. Like Felicia said, we're always like skeptical. We're always like, okay, where's the data for that? It comes off as I know better than you, which is not great, right? And then I know like a lot of my behavior analyst colleagues, we don't come from a bad place. We're just analytic people. So, but then we don't realize that excessive questioning might affect the rapport between team members. So these are all the different barriers that we face when we try to collaborate in a team. So let me pause here and open the floor for discussion to ask, have you ever experienced any of these barriers when collaborating? And is there any other barriers that are not listed here, especially cultural, right? Because this paper was written like from a Western standpoint. For us living in Asia, what are some additional barriers that we might face?
I think you mentioned earlier about the professional lack of properly trained professionals. I mean, that in itself, I mean, yeah. So I think that's a big issue for me. But I also realize that even that label itself, like how we look at it as a lack of properly trained professional, even that wording is very Western industrialized. Um it just very it came from a very Western perspective, like who says who can say what is properly trained, right? Like those who graduated from Western industrialized countries, the universities from Western industrialized countries. But anyway, yeah, I think for me, properly trained professionals are really hard to find, and yeah, and collaborating with somebody who has very different background, education and background as you is extremely hard.
For me, I think when I first saw the list, I was like doing this because I totally agree and have experience with like when I was collaborating. We didn't actually define our roles, and I thought like functional behavior assessment, that was our job as an ABA. But then OT had similar assessments, and then she was doing it herself. Then I thought like, okay, then what's my role? We didn't have the structure, so I think one other barrier that I can add to this list is the actually we don't have a system. We don't have a collaborative system where they define each other's roles because it's not really common to actually collaborate with other fields. And also, like you mentioned, Tanya, the different words that we use in our own profession, they also have it, but we don't know that we are using the same method because we have different words for those things. So yeah, that's my experience.
Hi. Oh, now I
Yeah.
can talk. I'm really sorry. So on that barriers, I think building upon the other than the training part, I think um, now that we actually need to collaborate, but that we don't get trained properly on that skills. My personal barriers is on the communication part, so that as Jean mentioned before, we're doing the same things with OT or SLPs, but how do we, how do we put aside the ego and convey our messages in ways that um, make the other professionals or the families wanted to do it together instead of my way or their way, that such a thing. I think for me, even with teachers, sometimes I still have difficulties to convey what I'm trying to say in ways that not pushing the teacher or not to, insinuate other things that I didn't mean.
No, yeah, I think like those are all very very good points and good barriers that you guys have identified. Yeah, I think one of the things that stood up for me is collaboration. I think it's a two-way street, right? So if we put in efforts into collaborating, we have to make sure the other party is also open to collaborate too. So I think even before like these proactive strategies, like Gian said, building a system for how collaboration should be like within a team, we need to find team members that share the same values as us that do want to collaborate, which I feel like that first step is really hard, especially like Felicia said, with limited resources in Indonesia and potentially in Korea too. So so yeah, it's really hard, and I think yeah, we can talk more about this later if we have time, but it's definitely something to think about also. Now that we talked about our barriers, the other barrier is our history, right? Um, According to research, BCBAs are more likely to provide and adopt recommendations to and from another BCBA than to a non-BCBA. So far, the most common relationship is we act as consultants. So we give advice to OTs or speech or schools to better manage the client's behavior in their session so that they do well. Essentially, that's been our role. But when we are in this like consultant role, we forget to ask for their feedback. So it's just us giving, but not us asking to receive. And this may lead to reduced likelihood of our interventions being not implemented in their settings. So this is just a reminder that whenever we're collaborating, we have to make sure that we're also listening to them, not just like speaking to them. And like Felicia said, historically, behavior analysts has made efforts in distancing ourselves from mainstream psychology, which is very unfortunate, right? And even in our previous ethics code from 2014, behavior analysts do not implement non-behavior analytic interventions. I don't know if you guys remember back in grad school, but I was still following this ethics code. So my ethics class was based on the 2014 ethics code. And I remember practicing, like role playing, how to respond when a speech or like an OT suggested non-behavior analytic approach, such as using weighted vest or doing like heavy work to regulate like one's like hyperactivity, things like that. So we used to role play in the classroom. We used to like say, "Hi, I appreciate the input. However, unfortunately, it because of my ethics code, I am unable to implement that." So back then, when I was a grad student, I was like, "Oh, this makes sense. The ethics code says this, so this makes sense to me." But now that it's been like 4 or 5 years of me practicing, I'm like, wow, thank God I did not have an opportunity to do that with like a real OT or speech, because that might like break that might be offensive to them, or that might give off the impression that I don't want to collaborate or like try or value their experience and their education. So yeah. And then the other ethics code is also behavior analysts design behavioral change programs that are conceptually consistent with behavior analytic principles. So these two ethics code in the paper were identified as like examples of our rejection towards non-behavioral interventions. But thankfully, In our new ethics code, we are allowed to implement non-behavioral services as long as we have the required competencies to do so, which is a great shift, I think. Any thoughts on this? Because I think this is super interesting, and I didn't realize this before I read this paper.
Sorry, didn't realize the rejection. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I didn't realize like there was rejection towards non-behavioral interventions, because the ethics code for me at that time, it was just like gold standard. I was like, okay. I didn't do like critical thinking, or perhaps when they were writing this, collaboration was not on top of the list of what's important. I'm not sure. But
Yeah, I think, and also this ethic codes, these ethic codes are written for America, right? Like the American contexts, right?
mhm.
I don't know. I think, which is why I think they want us to create our own organization, right? Instead of relying on the BACB to create an ethic codes that should work for everybody in all continents. Right? Because, like, for example, uh be, allows behavior analysts to implement previously behavior analysts design behavior change programs that are conceptually consistent. Well, sorry, do not implement non-behavior analytic interventions, right? I don't know, because here in Indonesia, again, there's like so little trained professionals here that it's hard to just stick to that prescription. Like, for example, AAC, use of AAC. I think in the perfect world in America, there would be an AAC consultant, not even an SLP, but an AAC consultant who will assess the child and evaluate which AAC, which technology, which app, which uh, devices that would be right for each and every child, right? Here in Indonesia, we don't have that, and so what, and so I don't know. Yeah, I think again, these ethic codes is just hard to how do you say it? It's just really hard to uh really apply it across different cultural contexts, I feel.
No, yeah, I agree. It's really hard to apply across cultural contexts. Like you said, it's written for America, by Americans, I'm assuming. So it is really hard. But yeah. Okay, cool. Let's look at some solutions. Oh, there we go. Some solutions to the barriers that we discuss is always including the clients within the decision-making process, which I feel like I hope most of us are already doing. Referring back to the client's or family's treatment goals when a conflict arises. So what I really liked so I worked in multiple centers before moving back to Jakarta, and one of the centers I worked at is in Massachusetts, and what I really liked is across, like in the collaborative team for each client, they had like a long-term goal and a short-term goal, which everyone kept referring back to. So I think that was really good, and I still use it today with all my clients, and that's been very helpful for us. And then another solution is using mutually acceptable and understandable terminology, which we have already discussed. Having a collaborative structure that fosters frequent, regular interactions, which, yes, we know, but this is so hard to implement. Like everyone, it's really hard to find time where everyone can meet. Developing a formal relationship with each member of the treatment team. That's really important too, having like a formal relationship where maybe they sign, like everyone signs like a contract before joining this collaborative team. Having small caseloads is also a solution, fostering culture of collaboration, administrative support, having time and space, giving opportunities to interact and share clinical expertise, shared planning, debriefing opportunities, setting reinforcers in place to maintain collaboration, and allowing time for coordination of care. These are all important, but I think maybe for like business owners, like if you own like an ABA center or if you own a school, you can make these changes. We can prioritize collaboration and make these changes. But as an employee in a company, that's just really hard, right? So I think it just goes back to, I know there's like a lot of papers on like finding a good company to work for, like what to look for. And I think collaboration, like the company's value on collaboration is definitely something that we can look at when we're looking for a company to work for also. And then reframing discussions. So instead of focusing on what our differences are, we can discuss our commonalities and while remembering our differences in obligation. So like what we mentioned previously, like there's a lot of overlap between us behavior analysts and SLPs and OTs, right? But also our fundamental ethical principles overlap. We all value autonomy. The goal here is just to give as much independence for the client as possible, right? I feel like that's a common goal. And we all thrive to avoid harm. We thrive to keep client dignity. Those are things that we can focus on because those are our commonalities. And then reframing new ideas as suggestions instead of attempts to undermine a discipline. That's really important because it's like a mindset, right? We have to reframe suggestions not as attacks, but as like, oh, that's a new idea. Like having this growth mindset and a mindset that keeps wanting to learn is very important so that we can collaborate better. And then this is what GN suggested, developing guidelines for collaboration and common code of ethics across disciplines, which includes how decisions are made. Like, do we do like a majority rule situation? Like how do we resolve conflict? So those are the things that needs to be included in those guidelines. And then some reactive strategies. We refer back to the agreed guidelines whenever there's a problem or a conflict. We can also reframe conflict as an opportunity to learn about another's profession. And the last one, again, going back to institutions, using the institutional resources such as additional collaboration training or receiving feedback on performance on collaboration, and referring back to like institutional goals or values, and putting incentives to collaborate in place in an institution. So those are some solutions that were presented. What are your thoughts on the solutions presented? This is actually my last slide, I think. Yep, this is actually my last slide. So what do you guys think of the solutions? And based on our discussion today, what are some action plans that you guys think that you can do to increase collaboration in your practice? Maybe I'll start. Maybe I'll start. I think after today's discussion, what I want to do is create incentives to collaborate. I was thinking maybe we can do, I can provide my behavior analyst with allocated time to contact like schools or like OTs or like their kids' speeches, so they know the importance of collaboration. And because we do have trainees at our center, like getting our trainees involved in like calls and our meetings with different professionals, I think is very good so that they can see how we like address like how we communicate between different professions. I think that's really important. Yeah, that's my takeaway from today's discussion. I'm opening the floor if anyone has other takeaways, but if not, it was really great. I learned a lot from all experiences.
After having this time to think about the collaboration, because I'm a ACE provider, right? So I was thinking, like you suggested, Tanya, earlier, like, so I contact some professionals from other fields, and then I just tell them how she or he can train us using the BSD model, maybe. Yeah, so they can just we can choose just one skill from their profession. We can train it up to our like 80%, I don't know. We can train them up to a certain level using the BSD. So in that way, they can learn what BSD model is on their side, and then we can learn from them on our side. That's one thing that I thought of. And just for the overall lecture that you gave us, actually, I didn't really think of it as a skill before. I don't know why, but I didn't think like collaboration was a skill. But then since you brought it into that category, I think like I got more confident in, okay, I can build on this skill. It's a skill, so I can build on it. So that brought me some confidence. And then I was also thinking from my actual experience, because this is between professions also, but before we are professionals, we are also like just social beings, right? So I think the social skill part is also a key portion. It's not something actually professional, but I was thinking when you were saying things about we should get supervision, I was thinking, who should we get supervision from? Like Felicia and Tanya's, you said, even professors, they don't know like how to do it. They can't really train us on how to do it. But then to overcome some of the disagreements and things in a easy way, maybe we need to have like social skills training from the professionals who do communications in management. I don't know, in other areas. I think we should do that. Yeah, that's one thought I got.
That's really
and overall it was very interesting. I really love this subject. Yeah, thanks, Tanya.
Gian, I love your idea of getting
Yeah.
them
Oh,
communicate
go ahead.
professional. Sorry, Tiara, go ahead.
No, finish off. It's okay.
Maybe I wonder if we can like define what these behaviors are. Like have them come and like so like making like even making like a competencies checklist for these soft skills that we need to effectively collaborate would be super cool.
yeah.
Maybe Barbie should make one, Tanya. Barbie should make one.
I know. Go ahead, Fel.
Oh yeah. So it's just a small thing. So to respond to what everybody just said, I have been starting to follow this Instagram account of uh of this I guess corporate lawyer, and she has a great way of saying things professionally. I need to write them down and share it with you all, and so we can memorize it. I can't think of an example, but I was watching one video yesterday, but it was like, I don't agree with you. Instead of saying that, you say, or I don't know, you say something like, um, yeah, let me give that some thoughts and get back to you later or something. The way that they said it was much better than how I said it, but I feel like these one liners needs to be memorized, so like when the moment comes, you know when to say it and you can say it fluently, not like how I just did it. So I think that's one. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start writing down those one-liners to say things that are more diplomatic. Um, and then number two, I think I wanted to create like a structure for collaboration, because um, my therapist has started to do like check-ins with parents on how, that is one step in collaboration, right? You collaborate with parents for sure. That's the easiest, the not the easiest, but that's the one collaboration that you must do, right? To make sure that we are doing programs that are meaningful for the family, but then the family can also maintain. I have been drafting a form how to do these check-ins with parents, and so exactly what to say, what to and how to say it, and to make sure that the concerns from both parties, the center or the school as well as the parents, are put on the table. So I think that's what I'm gonna do, put more structure into collaboration. Yes.
I agree. I think communication is one of the biggest skills in collaborations, and one of the the front, like the example Felicia just mentioned, the therapist talking with the parents or caregivers. Um, that's definitely a skills that I need to learn the hard way. I was unfortunately wasn't specifically trained to do that, so I had to do it the hard way now. So yeah, I totally get why. Yeah, the communication skill is really important, at least with the parents, with clients that we see day to day, and then gradually, we can expect them to talk to other professionals or colleagues. I think, now thinking about it in terms of task analysis, in my experience, I was all over the place. So I wasn't learning from the first easiest one, but then it was the hardest one, and then easy one. It was all over the place. So yeah, that would be great if we can create a system that make it easier for our younger analysts, future analysts.
Oh,
Right.
Gian, Tiara, you also have a background in OBM, right?
A bit, tiny bit.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. So maybe feel free to maybe share share the ABA perspective on organizational and management. Maybe that would be a great one as well, if you feel
Yeah,
like it.
yeah. Actually, now that I'm working alongside with Kuntira, so sometimes when we have some discussions, the way I see it is that, okay, it's not fair to have them to do this because they don't know it or we don't have the tools for it. So we cannot expect them to do that. You know what I'm saying? So when we expect our therapists to perform in such a way, but we know that we haven't equipped them with any tools or any trainings or even the system for them to perform their actions. I don't know. It kind of helped me to decide whether these expectations of performance is appropriate or not appropriate. So yeah, I don't know if that's what you meant, but that's what came up on top of my head right now.
All right. Any last words from you, Tanya, or are we good to go?
I think we're good. That was a really
All
fun
right.
discussion. Thank you.